lack of time, not because of lack of time, but because of the idea that it should penetrate into each and every young student's mind, so that their output, the architectural work that they will do, the thought process that they have, will become more sensitive to the context that they are building in, will be more sensitive to the environment that they are building in, to the people for whom they are building, and so on and on. So it is always a like we are all teachers as well. So we all know that the students basically don't absorb everything that is taught to them. Students usually absorb, if you go by statistics, not more than 40 to 50%. So even if you repeat something to them twice, thrice, that's fine. So when we make an academic schedule, teaching schedule, what we usually do is, if we have to teach, let's say X, then you make a syllabus which is X plus 2, so that at least the students absorb X. So that is the thought process behind it. And I've been practicing since last 30-35 years, abroad as well as here in India. And I have realized the kind of buildings that we produce in our country is a little less than pathetic. I'm not saying that the work that we are doing is exceptional or is the only way out or is the right way. But something is going wrong in our built environment these days, in the way our cities are being designed and cities are being built. Something is amiss, and I don't know what is that amiss. So I've tried to think over it a lot, and I've tried to formulate a thought process, to have a philosophy, to have an ideology, and so on and on. And then I realized somewhere in between that having a thought process or having an ideology or having a philosophy is not enough. There has to be a method to convert that thought process into reality. I mean, even when we teach design to students, we talk of concepts, and we talk of what is your fundamental, ideology behind which you have done this design, and so on and on. But then how does a student or how does an architect convert that thought process into actual work, either an academic work or actual building? So that was the idea behind the whole thing, to have a defined thought process, to have a defined method or methodology to convert that thought process into actual design. And then the third part is obviously the design and the built work. Now, whatever I am talking today is basically for students and for the young minds, and it's nothing to do with the council, because I'm also too occupied with policies and guidelines and regulations and acts and everything. So today what I'm going to discuss is my own personal thought process and personal work that I've done. Many of you would have probably seen this, heard this earlier. Little bit changes here and there, suited to the context. So the thought is that, comes from a fundamental fact that man always shared a symbiotic relationship with nature. I mean, this we all understand. But how do we work? This relationship resulted in a contextual framework of the land that he belonged to. And his architecture was also always rooted to its land. And architecture was and is essentially contextual. It is rooted not only to the ground upon which it sits, but also is an extension of us, its people, their culture, and the entire value of things. Every architectural creation is always a step in the onward evolution of the land to which it belongs. You can link, what I am saying or the text matter with the images that are being shown to you. They have a very intricate symbiotic relationship amongst themselves. And with over 3,000 years of recorded history, Indian vernacular traditions grew and evolved to form a strong and a cohesive architecture. And this evolution grew richer with assimilation and inputs from various cultures coming into the subcontinent, including the British. When the Mughals came in, the architecture that they produce in our country was absolutely contextual. Although the broader vocabulary was different, but different in the local Indian architecture, but the Islamic architecture which was produced in this country was totally different than any other country where Islam ruled or invaders came in. Similarly, the colonial architecture, the British architecture in India was absolutely contextual. And you will not find this in Britain, or you will not find this in any other country where Britain ruled. And the vernacular process of growth and evolution continued in spite of the changed and newer functional needs and expression. There was an inbuilt, inherent chain which grew and evolved over a period of time. And this chain bonded itself into a cohesive architecture, in spite of the functions being changed. We never had welcome arches or welcome gates or war memorials or factories or industrial sheds and so on and on. But in spite of geographical, climatic, and cultural diversity that India is, it still bonded itself into a cohesive expression, be it Portuguese in Goa or colonial architecture or, so many other places you see. The architectural development was a cohesive development. And this evolution, this chain of evolution that I'm talking of, was interrupted with the advent of the Industrial Revolution and resultant globalization that came in. And along with the coming in of modern architecture in India. Modern architecture of India intentionally defies its older neighbors rather than standing beside them in peace. And wherever these impersonal forms of industrialization and development, so-called development, have penetrated, they've intruded upon the traditional profiles of cities, towns, and villages. And the predictability and monotony of today's modern architecture is astonishing, be it Hinjawadi in Pune or Shanghai in China. We have to think, what kind of buildings are we making today? We still get married in a Mangal Karyalaya like this, called Tukaram Sabhagrah. With thousands of years old rituals, we still follow those functions and the mantras and the shlokas and everything. The process is same, but we want a Greco-Roman facade for our traditional marriage halls. Love for the prestige Western leaves much space for amusement. What is prestige Western? I mean, if you see this Development Authority building of Nagpur, you will find a Florentine dome with a lantern on top and a fake RCC slab and so on and on, which defeats the entire purpose of the dome and the structural systems that it had. And this is what love for prestige Western is, because prestige is something which you copy senselessly, is neither here nor there. What kind of buildings? With due apologies to the architects of the buildings, I don't know who they are, but due apologies to them. We have to think what kind of buildings we are making today. Something has gone amiss with our contemporary architecture. We're not only making buildings which roast the users inside, but are insensitive and impractical for our climate. The Westerners have to they have to bring the sun inside, and we have to keep the sun out. And we are not only bringing the sun inside, but we are increasing the surface areas by protrusion, by making complex pyramidal shapes for the sun to come in from all directions. The chain of evolution that I was talking of appears to have been broken. Now, all vernacular architecture was ingrained in freedom. If you see the slides, you will find these are all works of our office, and I'm trying to explain what I'm saying through the images behind. That all vernacular architecture was ingrained in freedom, and this freedom came with a sense of responsibility, and that sense of responsibility is missing these days. Traditionally, creativity was always linked with common sense, and this vernacular architecture relied on logic and purpose. Today, we have lost the sense of logic in architecture. Indian vernacular architecture respected growth in conjunction with continuity. Now, this conjunction with continuity is what we have lost. And it exhibited creative and aesthetical details, which are often solutions to a problem. These days, we are creating problems and then giving solutions. It's the other way around. and our architecture at Smith and Habeeb Architects is a response to this and the realization of the importance and the appropriateness of the traditions of architecture that have gone by. Architects need to pick up the threads that modernity severed. The need to reinvent a new and more responsive architecture, which will be a continuum of the vernacular. The need to reinvent. I mean, this is a very vitally important link in the whole process. The need to reinvent a new and more responsive architecture, which will be a continuum of the vernacular and be a response to climate, context, tradition, culture, and our lost construction techniques, importance of daylight, ramifications of heat, and appropriateness of built forms, resulting in a new architectural vocabulary, a language having its root in layers of traditional wisdom, and a fresh interpretation of modern construction techniques and vernacular principles and forms, and is a link between the past and the present. I do not want anyone, any historian, to assume that my buildings were built in the 1100s or 1500s. I want the historians to believe that my building was built in 2000, 2020, 2021, because the concept of time frame in architecture is very vital and determines the evolution and the chain of evolution that I was talking about. And this we call contemporary vernacular. Now, what is contemporary vernacular? The images that you were seeing were from Priyadarshini Institute of Architecture and Design Studies that we designed, which relies heavily on the wisdom of our traditional architecture, uses modern materials, uses a construction technique which is very age-old. There are no RCC slabs here, and so on and on. And uses the wisdom, for example, if you will see the wooden post when it went into an adobe wall or a mud wall, over a period of time it got decayed. Same thing happens with the steel column. When it goes into brickwork, it starts rusting soon. So they used to, our vernacular builders used to leave a gap between the wall where the post went in so that it lasted long. The same principle has been used here. So this is what you learn. You do not need to reinvent the wheel again and again. So what is contemporary vernacular? It's like going back to roots, building sensibly, building optimally, building intelligently, building correctly, within the framework of context, climate, tradition, geology, geography, and economy. So this is the actual thought process. So what is the method to convert? I mean, this is, you may call it philosophy, you may call it ideology, you may call it concept, X, Y, Z, whatever you want to call it. But this is what we as an office, as practicing architects, think that should be. And this chain and the continuous evolution of architecture in our country, we have climbed few steps, and I do not want to start climbing from step one. I want to take it forward from where our forefathers left. So we give ourselves 10 commandments. Moses gave his people 10 commandments. We give ourselves 10 commandments, that if we use these 10 commandments as a method, you won't go wrong and you will be on track to achieve your thought process that you have identified. The thought process, a student can have a thought process of his own. Need not be this, it may be X, Y, Z, anything. But to convert that thought process, the methodology is to be worked out. And when you do that, your design and your architecture output becomes foolproof. So first is respect for local people and their economy, respect for local climate, culture, and context, respect for man and nature, non-industrial building methods. It's impossible these days to not use industrial building methods, but use sensibly, use optimally, and use where needed. Reinventing and reintroduction of traditional building construction techniques. Continuum of tradition, imaginative use of traditional building techniques, space and volume. Recycle, reuse is a very, very critical element of the entire commandments. Innovation in finishes. You cannot, finishes don't mean a wall finish or a plaster finish or a tile finish. You cannot use material as they were used earlier, thousands of years ago. You have to use the knowledge and the wisdom that you have gained over thousands of years to improvise on the finishes and the materials. And last is use of materials and an ecological approach towards them. So if you use these 10 points and principles, you will realize that your buildings will be contextual, sensitive, sensible, green, eco-friendly, environment-friendly, XYZ, GRAHA compliant, LEED compliant, IGBC compliant, whatever you want to call it. Any parameters it will fit in. And even if you use 50% of them, even then you will be able to produce architecture which is more sensible to the Mother Earth that you're walking on and living in. So this is the method that we have devised for a period of time for ourselves. And then I will try to explain it through some examples which are on the drawing board, which are not built yet. Some have started building. Because I realized that you have someone had said, I don't remember who, but professional photography has killed architecture. And how true it is, I realized. I've been speaking in so many forums and so many conferences, and I realized that, professionally shot sets, spaces of buildings where everything is so meticulous that you lose the humane touch of the user. And it generates and garners a lot of oohs and ahs and a lot of appreciation by the younger lot, but it defeats and kills the real meaning of architecture. So I started incorporating, whenever I'm talking to students, projects which are on the drawing board, projects which are in the SketchUp or Lumion rendered or 3D Max rendered and so on and on. So students feel at ease and they understand that an architect also, a practicing architect also works in the same method as they have to work at the studio. So I'm just showing you some residential projects which are underway, which have just started or which are on the drawing board. And then I'll try to explain through a few built and completed projects. This is a farmhouse that we're doing. I will not explain because lack of time. I will just explain what the project is, what is the highlight of the project, and what was our idea behind it. And you try to link, as students, you try to link of what I had just explained to you earlier, the philosophy and the method, how it has been done. Now, this is a farmhouse belonging to an extremely well-off person, and the work has started now. You have the bedrooms there, and you have, let me see if I can explain. Yeah. These are the bedrooms here. These are the bedrooms, and that's how you enter into the room. And you will see that the idea is to have, why does a person make a farmhouse? The farmhouse or a weekend home or something away from the city to de-stress himself. And his expectation is that he should get a space to live in, wherein everything that he gets in a city is different than what he gets in a city. So that's the idea. So let me just go to the next slide and we will see. That's the entrance to the house, and that's how you enter. You arrive, get dropped off, and that's the opening where you walk in. That's the opening you walk in. There are lily ponds and there are water bodies. And the concept is there are two planes. One is a horizontal plane, and that one is the other plane, which is the roof. And we are improvising in this, wherein the tiles, Mangalore tiles, the clay tiles that have been used, the terracotta tiles that have been used on the roof are having solar panels. So you don't need to give solar panels anymore, is what we are. But the experiment is not yet successful. We're still in the experimental stage, where we'll be able to produce efficiently solar power and convert it into providing electricity and other power to the house. The local sandstone, which is called Savner sandstone, has been used, and the wall masonries are actually road-bearing masonries. There is no RCC column or concrete structure here. The stone masonry takes the steel slab, which is a composite slab. I will explain you how it is. Various spaces in the farmhouse. That's the bedroom from the outside with large decks, overhangs, and taking in north light and so on and on. It's a composite structure of stone masonry, somewhere exposed brickwork and steel. There's the pool. How you look into the drawing room, the formal drawing room, which is for public and guests, and the other part is a private area. So that's how you look in various insides, spaces inside. That's the formal room I was talking about from the entrance. Look at the structural system that we're having. It's a steel structural system where the system is integrated with the facade, which is the glass facade. It's an integrated system wherein the structural system takes in the facade or and the cantilever thing. If you're seeing, it's a 3.5 meter wide cantilever being supported by those triangle metal sheet brackets. Same here as well. The structural system, the diagonal structural system, comes down from the foundation and goes up to the roof. And if you notice the system here, the structural system here, this is a structural system which is integrated with the columns coming in from the foundation. So a little improvisation here and there, and that's the inside courtyard. Those three are the entrances to the bedroom. So you take care of privacy. You give them enough transparency in the bedroom where they can see the view, the scenic view outside, yet create privacy from the inside so that bedrooms are private. There's another house in Nagpur. This is basically to show you an example where there is a tight plot of land in an urban city where still you can break down and articulate the facades with a solar powered roof on top, and the openings in the stone cladded floor is basically because of the activity that is happening inside, and the brick jali, terracotta jali on top is something to create some privacy because of the residential floors on top. These are some articulated views of the facade. And, this is how it looks. And there's another house which is in a village which is about 50-60 kilometers away from Nagpur, where there are a lot of Maharashtrian vadas. And what we have done is tried to have a contemporary expression of that vada with the same planning, where you have a square courtyard in between, you have a corridor running around the courtyard, and the rooms surrounding the courtyard. This is how it looks from other angles. And this is another house wherein we have improvised upon this belongs to a Muslim family, and they wanted privacy for their living quarters, private living quarters. And ground floor is the public areas. On the first floor are the residential areas. So you can draw these things. They are very efficiently functioning metal and WPC screens, wherein you can slide the entire screen onto one side and you will become a balcony. But when you want privacy, you can just pull the screens. You can see outside, but outside cannot see you. That's the entrance to that house. This is a house made of entirely of steel and terracotta tiles. This is how it is, outskirts of Delhi, wherein you have because of the security reasons and the heavy traffic that you have, we have created a walkway all around, a covered walkway where you can take a walk, you can do multiple activities, have barbecues and parties, and then the house is inside. There's the house and the pool outside. Entirely steel structure. The foundation is in traditional concrete foundation because of the heavy underground water, and you have steel as a superstructure. These are the details. We don't have time to go into each and every detail, but out here, the railing itself, the railing that you see, one highlight that I'm trying to tell you, the railing is also a structural member. Railing is not a railing. Balcony railing is not a railing, but is also a structural element. House from behind, the walkway that I was talking of, and the swimming pool and so on. Now, this is a house which is in a large community that we're developing around Ambazari Lake, and the idea was to have every house face the lake. So this is the front of the house, which actually is the back of the house. you arrive from the back of the house. That's the entrance. You walk into a drawing room, and left block is the services block. The top is a terrace, multi-functional terrace for parties, for gym, for yoga, and so on and on. And from there you can sit, and it opens east-west so that the wind that comes in from the lake is not stopped on the terrace. So that's how the whole planning is, and the house opens up. This is the lake-facing facade where it opens up to the lakefront. This is another house in another community development that we're doing. This is made of entirely adobe construction and burn bricks and adobe plaster and wood, recycled wood, that is. I'll just skip this. And this is an interesting house. You will find it doesn't fit into our style or vocabulary, things like that. But we're doing a development where there is a very strong colonial presence of, I don't know if you remember, I'm sure you would know Lattian's houses, residential houses in New Delhi, Lattian's Delhi, whatever you call it. Similar settlement is in this town where we're developing this. So we've tried to, and incidentally, the columns that you see have been recovered from a house which was demolished. So that vocabulary has been used there. Basically, being contextual does not mean that you will build in mud or use tiles or use stone or something. Context, you have to identify what the context is, and that context is to be used in your projects. Now, there's a house that we did in Indore. It's completed now, but I think I don't have the finished photographs. This is made of local stone available close by within 50 kilometers. This is how it looks since this is finished. Now, this is a large clubhouse that we're doing. It's on the drawing board at the moment. And that's the piece of land, and that's the lake there. And this is how the idea was the presence of the water body was overwhelming inside, and we didn't want any built mass there. So the grouping of the whole thing has been done in such a manner that it is absolutely transparent wherever the lake is visible. For example, if you see this side is the lake side, this is the lake side, and all this is transparent, it's visually transparent eyesights all over. The area which does not look into the lake is all service areas and other areas where transparency was not possible. And the swimming pool sits like an infinity pool at the corner where the lake comes closest to the building. This is the entrance, and you will see the transparency. You can notice the transparency in the jali facade that is there, which is perforated screen, and behind that is also perforated screen. So of course, there's a weather protection glass inside, but you can see the building through and through. You can see through the building. This is a clubhouse, so you have restaurants and party halls and playing areas, card playing rooms, bars and pubs and everything. But this is the grand entrance you arrive at, and you will realize the magnificence of the entrance porch. The topmost point of the porch is about normal 4 floors high building. It's about 40 feet high. That's the entrance. That's how you arrive to the club. That's the entrance to the porch. Once you're inside the porch, the entire porch is lit with multicolored glass, multicolored terracotta tiles having glass inside. This will also have solar-powered Bangalore tiles. And in the night, when you drive down from the entrance, the landscape is being done by a Hyderabad architect, and the landscape is designed in such a manner that as your car drives in or as your bike drives in, it's a dynamic displayed landscape as well as dynamic displayed lighting systems. So the movement of the car actually governs the lighting that happens in the porch as well as in the landscape. That's how you exit the porch and look at the pattern that the sun creates on the walls throughout the day and the LED lights that we create at night. There's the entrance walkway. You walk into an open lobby with nothing built on except a huge roof And then you sit there, chat, you have reception counter there, and that's the reception counter. Incidentally, the columns that are being used are also recycled and resourced from a building quarry close by, and that's how the passage is. And you can see the lake behind. You walk into the restaurants on the left hand side. On the right hand side is a huge, about 2 acres of sitting area for open dining, coffee shop. That's the open area, sit out. The swimming pool, the services of the swimming pool, the changing clocks around the pool, the restaurant facing the lake and the pool. I just try to understand the vocabulary and the structural system and the architectural connotation that it has on the form, on the build form. Some other views, and this is the spa and the Ayurvedic spa and the gym and a pub and so on and on. Open courtyards between two built masses. The first floor of the building, the bird's eye view of the building from the lake to the other side, and so on and on. I just done this once. Now, this is office that we're doing in Delhi of a student organization. Exposed brickwork. Northern side is the facade with the sun roof with solar panels, obviously, and how it looks at night. This was thought to be a very progressive and non-Indian looking building. So we were asked to revise the designs. And this is a place where students from across the country come and learn and study and live. So we tried to borrow motifs from across the states, 35 plus states, and convert it into various panels of GRC, wherein the building assumes this shape. The work has started. And there's another political party's headquarters in Rajkot. I just go through this. And just wherever possible, light is taken in. The building is made an effort to be transparent, to interact with the street outside, people outside, and vice versa. People walking on the street should also visually interact with what is happening inside the building. And you have dramatic entrance to the first floor of the building. And on the other side, you have screens to shield when the sun comes in. There's a small museum for two saints that we're doing in Nanded, and this is just a circulation of that museum, which is important, wherein you climb through a ramp or a staircase and go up, pay your obedience to the saints, and come down to the hall of the ground floor through those ramps and see and understand the life of the saints and the teachings of the saints. This is a museum that we're doing for Father of the Nation in Sevagram, outside the famous Sevagram ashram. It's in proposal stage at the moment, it's gone for approval. The humbleness of the person and the personality and the thought process compelled us to take the museum into a museum below the ground. We already had a slope of more than 3 meters on the site, and we utilized that slope by digging and filling and making the building absolutely under the ground. So this is what you see when you arrive, and this is what you see when you arrive into the museum. And you take a ramp down, and it's made up of brick and exposed brickwork totally. Somewhere to give relief, there's a plastered wall. Various courtyards, interactive spaces, patterns, and even when you're on top, if there's a roof, if there's a covered area, that is also transparent. You can see what is happening inside by standing on the arrival level. So it's not that there's a slab or there's a solid surface and you cannot look down. So this is how various courtyards and everything, interactive spaces. This is absolutely on the drawing board, as we have given a proposal and we are awaiting a approval from the government. And then it will go on to the detailing stage. Now, this is a freedom fighter Smarak and a museum in Chhattisgarh. This also derives from the fact that the freedom fighters from Chhattisgarh, basically tribals, were unrecognized and not acknowledged, and very humble and very docile people. And but their contribution in the freedom struggle was immense. So we arrived at a vocabulary which was also very humble and polite, and that's how you go down into the earth for the memorial and the museum. These are various sections which I won't have time to discuss. I'll just show you. This is how it looks. You just have a white dome when you see from top, and everything else is your grass and your landscape areas. And then you go down into the memorial and the museum. The file is heavy. I think this way. It's just this. This one. I think the file is heavy. It's getting stuck. I'm sorry, there's a break here. Yeah. So this is how the museum is. On the left-hand side is the memorial. On the right-hand side, with that circular dome with an opening in between, is a courtyard which is covered temporarily with a temporary fabric-like structure, and the museum is inside, in the ground. There's a natural slope of the side coming from the back of the side to the front of the side, and that's what we utilize for the memorial and the museum. This is how it looks. That's the central courtyard of the 4 blocks of the museum, where you walk down into the museum, into the central courtyard, and on the 2 perpendicular axes are your exit, and the left-hand side is the memorial. That's the memorial part, where you have walls inscribed with the names. That's the entrance to the museum, where you walk into the ground and come to the museum. Now, this is a pottery research. You can ask me to stop whenever whenever your time is up. I can stop anytime and explain. So this is a pottery research and development center in Maharashtra, where there are existing. They used to make pottery. They still make some pottery, do some research in terracotta material building product, material development. There were 2 chimneys which are existing, which you can see 2 of them, and we have retained that visual, potently visual symbol of those chimneys, which are of the days gone by, and tried to club the buildings around the chimneys. So the open areas are the areas needed to dry the terracotta products and the ceramic products. So that is what it is, and the kilns have been now modernized and taken in. On the left-hand side is the white roof that you see in the administrative block, laboratories, research center, and storage units. And on the right-hand side, you will see hostels, staff quarters, and conference facilities. That's the vocabulary. It's made in sun-dried bricks, adobe plaster, self-load-bearing walls, and so on and on. So this inverted parabolic arch is the only efficient system of not giving a lintel or a beam to support the opening, and that's what has been used. And obviously, there's some restriction in the software, and to give those slightly curved, soft edges that happens in an adobe wall is probably not possible here. But these are covered walkways connecting one building to the other. These are the hostel blocks, ground +1, the staff quarters, the play area around the staff quarters, which is in staff quarters in phase 2. This is how it looks, and that's the conference facilities, and so on. Now we're doing some wayside amenities for the NHAI, and there are a couple of proposals that we have made. This one is being made outside Nagpur. And it's an interesting form where you have very shortage of land on both the sides, the LHS and the RHS of the highway, the left-hand side and the right-hand side of the highway, where the restricted land. So we give only parking and toilet amenities there. And the entire food court and other activities are lifted above the ground, 6 meters above the ground, connected by a lift and a staircase, lifts and staircases. And this entire block is a solar power generating block. And with advanced solar panels, it produces enough electricity not only to power itself, but to supply power to the nearby villages as well. So this is how it is. I'll just skip through. It's a structural tube and also a solar generating. We're also doing experiment with road panels. When the cars drive over it, they also produce electricity. It's not a great success at the moment with us, but we are still trying to find agencies and vendors to do that. Now, as the highway travels across states, the vocabulary keeps changing. So when it travels in Jaipur or surrounding Jaipur or about to reach Jaipur, so trying to make it contextual, trying to make it Dholpur sandstone, Jaisalmer stone, and other locally available Khatu stones and so on and on. Trying to borrow vocabularies from the local potent architectural symbols. This is how the entrance is, and that's how the entrance is. Rainwater recycle, rain harvesting pond with aerations, and then you have the areas wherein you can sit, relax, the food court on the left hand side, children's play area, the parking in front. That's how it looks from the outside, from the highway. The detail, one of the details, the jali and the stone jali and the other thing. And this is how it looks, the LHS and the RHS. It's about 15 acres on the left hand side, 15 acres on the right hand side. There are some activities that are connected by an underpass, and there's some activities which are not repeating. The activities like you have a trauma center which has few ICU beds and other medical facilities. There's a huge food courts. There's a motel. There's a shopping area, local produce shopping area. There's a dhaba. There's a dormitory for truck drivers, fuel station, so on and on. So some activities repeat, some activities don't. This is how it is. And when you reach Jodhpur and you crossing Jodhpur and exiting towards Gujarat, the vocabulary changes, but the material remains same. The construction technique remains same in stone, and all this are being built down. So this is how it is. The details of the food court from the outside. Same concept of recycled water, but in a form of a square cone and so on and on. And this is it. And we're doing this in across the country. It changes when it starts from Srinagar, the vocabulary changes, and when it comes to Gujarat and further south, again the vocabulary changes. Now these are Parle Vaijanad Temple in Bede. Parle, we're doing some, but the project is on hold at the moment. So I'll just quickly. These are the possible interventions. These are the entire temple complex and the surrounding precincts where the intervention is happening. There's locals, black stone, basalt stone, and Harihar Kund, which is now it's a dump yard at the moment. So we propose it to be renovated and so on and on. I'll just skip this because we're doing a very huge, large convention and exhibition center in Nagpur for Agro Vision exhibition and agricultural university. This is how it is, and we were short of land. And they needed experimental fields for horticulture as well as agriculture. So we devised this method wherein you need large parking spaces, laboratories, research center, and staying arrangement for hotel kind of thing, guest house kind of thing. So what we have done is in this process, we have made a roof and the horticulture happens over the roof of the exhibition halls. We pit it against the land value that it may have if we buy another land close by, or giving it over the roof, which was enough area. Because enough area. These three halls are about 1.5 lakh square feet. It gives you enough area to them to do horticulture experiments. So that's how it is. It's a flowing roof, and that's how it looks. And entrance, and you arrive. There are 3 exhibition halls. The central exhibition hall has a food court. It has a convention center, conference facilities, and audiovisual facilities and all. That's how entrance. And there's a gap, there's open space between the 2 exhibition halls, which is an interactive space for the exhibitors as well as visitors and guests. That's how it looks. The admin block, the research block, and that's it. These are some projects which are finishing and getting completed. The large apartment scheme in Rajkot in Gujarat. The entrance lobby. This is how it looks. This is a house, completed house in Nagpur, using sandstone columns, Bangalore tiles, and wooden roofs, recycled from broken old houses. Few completed houses. House under construction, where I explained the detail of steel, but we're running out of time, so we'll just let it be. How steel is used and how the structural system is used in steel. There's a pub which is just being completed. I'll just skip this. Another house detail. The other building which is getting completed. This is an extension of Mungsaji Maharaj temple precincts, where they have dining halls and you have residential guest houses and shopping areas to sustain the maintenance of the temple. Dining areas, dormitories, another office completed. This is a large museum for the Banjara community that we're doing in a place near Washem called Bora Devi, which is their most holiest of places, Sant Sevalal Maharaj temple premises, in which we are making the country's largest museum. It's an inverted dome made in steel, and the entire building is solar panels. It is about 80,000 square feet of solar panels, which makes it self-sufficient. These are the solar panels that I was talking about, in construction stage at the moment. Now, this is the JD campus that we won the Intabab Award for. This building is entirely recycled, reused material. You have the tiles which are recycled, Bangalore tiles which are recycled, furniture which is recycled, stone which is reused, and so on and on. This is Priyadarshini Institute of Architecture College, where I am the director. This is JD College, same again, academic block facade. I will not explain in detail because I have another meeting at 5:30, so I'll have to wind it up in 10-15 minutes. And I look at the wisdom of the ancient builders, where the stone masonry, which is heavy, was on the ground floor, the brick on the first, and nothing on the top, in the sense that the entire wall itself becomes an opening in wood and all. Every window, every wood, every steel that has been used is recycled in this building, including the stone masonry, which is the local souvenir, and various corridors, wherein you try to build an institute which is unlike a typical engineering college and an institute, and you puncture the dead and the boring corridors that we have through various open to sky courtyards. You bring the light in, it cools down the building, it provides much visual relief, and so on and on. And this is how it looks during sunset. Another academic block, corridors, terracotta jalis, brick arches, and so on and on. And this is to highlight how the windows have been reused and recycled. This is the house belonging to one of the wealthiest persons in the world, and he wanted a house, and he wanted a village house. And this is how it has been done. The entire area, tribals were used for their expertise and skill in whether it was plaster skills, motifs in plaster, or wood carving, and so on, or ceiling paintings, and various kind of painting. So the house is around a courtyard with about 5 or 6 rooms, and this is how it is. And the local artisans have worked, bamboo screens, and so on and on. Cement tile flooring. Oh, this is the house, just skip it. This is PADs. Skip this. Now this is during it takes a little time to explain, but these are some of the projects that we have done in London. I'll skip that. The house belonging to Sri Sri Ravi Shankar Art of Living in Nagpur, which is absolutely white. Again, there's some little jumbling of the slides. I think I'll just skip this. This is done for Taj Group of Hotels in Bandhavgarh. It's called Mova Koti, wherein, that's the paradox that we all live in, wherein you get stressed so much in life, running around, earning money, and then you want to spend money to de-stress yourself and find some peace. And you pay 70,000 a night to stay here. And, So that's the idea. It's a Paradox is fully air-conditioned cottage made in mud and with local tiles. There's a courtyard outside and eating and dining, sitting areas outside the cottage. Another Taj resort wherein the lounge is all open. It's not air-conditioned, neither it has walls. Another lounge of another resort in Bandhavgarh. There's the reception. See, in resorts, what happens is, it's my very favorite topic to design as well as to discuss, but I'll explain later sometime when we meet in person. The passion and the romance behind design of resorts and what is the client looking at. Recycled materials again, reused, refurbished material. This also belongs to one of the modern day so-called Babas, wherein the ceremonial pathway, wherein the Maharaj walks in and, petals are showered and so on and on. Water body, both the side, changing the microclimate, it was very hot and things like that. See, what is more important is to now explain the thought process more pragmatically and more practically. Wherein you have a context, you have to understand the nature and culture relationship, how this works, and what is the sense of place that we're talking at, what is the distinct character that we're trying to give to our buildings, and what is the massing and the surroundings that we all are looking at. What is the importance of light and shadow and the interplay of natural light? How can it act as an artist in your building when you try to bring in romance through light and shade, natural light and shade, where you make the user fall in love with your buildings? What is the levels of indulgence that we're talking of? How does a person who is walking in your buildings feel excited to walk further down the aisle, down the corridor, look left, look right, and then is curious to walk ahead and find out what is ahead? That is the level of detailing and the involvement that you can have of your user in your buildings. And I have already told how light is an artist in your buildings. Excitement, exhilaration, unexpected forms to increase indulgence and to increase interest and to retain curiosity, the urinal partisans in JD College. Every space has a temperature, warmth of that space has to be exploited. The contrast, the liveliness of that space, the romance of the wall and the sunlight, how to have this interaction and increase interaction with the users as well, is that ethereal experience that is needed. Sun is a very important element in our building, in our architecture. And we have to create a stage. Our buildings have to create a stage where the sun plays in all its moods and glory. The morning sun, the afternoon sun, the evening sun, all have different lights. The tactile nature and texture of materials, the warmth of materials, the appreciation of scales and voids, innovation in local technology and the character of materials is to be understood. Temperature also has material. And the relationship, we all have relationship with each other. We vibe with someone, we don't vibe with someone. We are friends, we are great friends, we are enemies of people. Similarly, materials are as well. Materials are living beings. You have to treat them as living beings to create a relationship of visual delight. Solid and void relationships, interplay of volumes, a sense of mystery is very important. Without mystery, your buildings are not exciting. Now, if you see the building on the right-hand side, there's the entrance to the clubhouse in Raipur, how you walk in and you don't know the roof coming down to the floor, then rising up, and so many other interesting pathways can be. And then unless the users interact with your architecture, it is dumb, senseless, and mundane. So the users have to have an interface where your architecture provides that interface. And ultimately, the user has to elicit emotional response and have indelible memories of your space and architecture. And my architecture is based on the fundamental philosophy that in the eternal journey of my soul, I'm a visitor on this earth, and I have inherited, apart from many things, architecture. And that when I leave this earth, nothing of me will remain. My body will merge with nature. My architecture, whenever it dies, shall do so too. That to me is real sustainability, absolute truth, and the foundation of true architecture. If your architecture is able to merge with Mother Nature whenever it dies, however, how many years later. And if you're able to use materials which will be consumed by Mother Earth, that is the true sense of sustainability in this planet. And this means transforming your mind and changing your mindsets. And that's it. And unless you change those mindsets, nothing will change. So thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Now I request Ravi sir and Doshi sir if you can have some questions or some inputs on this presentation for our students.
I'm still in the marathon, which started from Rajasthan to Maharashtra. So, I don't know what to ask actually.
Sorry.
But your whole idea of contemporary vernacular it can be seen in your work, and it is very interesting to actually know that this kind of so much work you are doing, and congratulations for that, and showing us so many projects was really educating.
Thank you, Amish. Thank you.
Congratulations, Smita and Habeeb. Wonderful work, wonderful portfolio of works that we got to enjoy actually. And while I was looking at it, I just recollected our college days, wherein we were actually looking up to you, your batch, you and Ajay especially. And you were both role models to our batch in terms of whenever submissions were there, we used to look at your work and get inspiration. And I was just trying to understand what your works were there and what Ajay's work were there. Was there a line of similarity in thinking? And I find surprisingly there are many things we could see. Marathi मध्ये म्हणाल बाळाचं पाय पाळलं. And there was actually confluence of some of the things, even Smita's thesis work, like whenever I saw your sloping roof, I was recollecting her school sloping roofs, the way she had organized her work. And I feel that something that you experiment during college days becomes a foundation for your future work. I would like your comment in terms of how far my interpretation has come as your
No, I
work.
recall, Ravi, if you recall, there was this competition, I think, some design competition for canteen.
Yes.
I think you won the first prize and I won the second prize, So remember that. So Viren was a jury, I think, if you recall.
Yeah. Right.
So then the kind of vocabulary that we did at that time, those bamboo and mud balls and things like that, and so that is definitely being carried over. Yes, I mean the foundations were there at that time, laid there. But in between, I lost track when I was in the US because of course, I was working in office and I had no idea. But then I looked at the work of Hassan Fatih and I used to look at the work of Hassan Fatih, Charles Correa, and others, including Doshiji. And then I realized, you have to go back to your own country, and there's the only place where probably you'll be able to continue your thought process, else you'll be, gone. And of course, what you said is right, that I did carry forward to some extent. And some compromises are made on the way, but I think compromises are a part of life. Without compromises, nothing works. So, but sticking to your ideology and thought process of what you think is right, initial days have been very tough where the clients don't get convinced of what you think is right. And then you find difficult to survive. But I think it's part of every architect's journey and everyone has to go through it. That journey has to be there too.
True.
हबीब जी नमस्कार, आपको मिलके, आपका काम देख के और सुन के बहुत अच्छा लगा।
थैंक यू सर।
और मुझे दोषी जी के यहाँ का वर्कशॉप अभी भी याद है, जहाँ आपने पोएट्री की थी और बहुत स्पिरिचुअल माहौल आपने बनाया था। थैंक यू फॉर दैट। MMC ऑफ पुणे की तरफ से आपको बहुत सारी शुभकामनाएं। जब भी आप हमारे कॉलेज आ सके, हमारी तरफ से हमेशा आपका स्वागत रहेगा।
थैंक यू सर।
हमारे पे ऐसे ही आपका स्नेह बना रहे। नमस्कार।
थैंक यू।
Thank you.